Larimer County. Remember I told you we filed 1,300 cases so far this year. They filed 500. That's the next big number in the state of Colorado. So when I say that we are leading the charge, leading the fight against fentanyl right here in the 4th Judicial District, that's what I mean, is that we're doing more for our community in the fight against fentanyl than any other district in the state. Another avenue that I think is important to talk about is trials. When I talk about 22,000 cases in a year, hopefully you all realize that 22,000 cases can't go to a jury trial every single year, right? There's not enough judges, there's not enough police officers or deputies, there's not enough DAs in the DA's office to take every single one of those cases to trial. But one of the ways that we can really work closely with our community is through jury trial, because we're asking community members who know nothing about a case, hopefully, we're asking them to come in, interrupt their lives, sit through jury selection, listen to some really tough evidence like murder cases or fentanyl death cases or what have you, and then come together in a unanimous way and find a verdict, right? Either a guilty or not guilty verdict. We're obviously the proponents for a guilty verdict if we think the facts are there. But that's a big endeavor. That requires everybody rowing in the same direction, the judges, the DAs, the deputies to get defendants into the courtroom. And then it requires those community members to be very diligent about their jury duty. And that's a big ask, right, from the community. We just set a new record in the state of Colorado for jury trials in a year, I should say. Anybody want to guess what the trial number is for 2023? You can't guess, Kate. I would guess that most of you probably have no idea what that would look like, right? 475 trials in 2023, which is a new state record. That's a huge number. It's out of context. It's tough for anybody to understand what that means. But the next closest is at least 100 trials less than that across the state of Colorado. So that's another commitment from me and the DA's office to the community to engage with the community to find justice for the community, because that's after all what we do in the DA's office. Another area that is really a signifier of the work that we're doing is in restitution. We do a really good job in achieving restitution dollars for victims of crime. Last year was over $1.7 million, which also is the #1 state number in the state of Colorado. So we are doing more for our community than any other DA's office in the state of Colorado. Those are some of the things that would give you that indication. I want to thank our men and women in law enforcement over the last several years. They've been under attack from the legislature. I'm just going to be very blunt about that, and I hope that you all have taken note of that and calling your legislators every single legislative session to talk to them about the criminal justice bills that are happening, about the law enforcement bills that are happening. But when you look back just to 2019, the law enforcement accountability bill was a direct attack on law enforcement. It led to people that were close to retirement, retiring early. It made it harder to recruit new people to come in and work in law enforcement. And this job that they do is already tough enough without the legislature and the governor going after the men and women that put on the uniform every single day, wear a badge, and when they say goodbye to their family members in the morning or night or whenever their shift is, and they don't know whether they're going to come home at the end of that shift, that's an important job, right? And we should all be indebted to the service that they give us. And it's important to know that a lot of the stuff that's happening in criminal justice is because of bad laws being passed in Denver from the legislature and being signed into law by the governor's office. And then these folks have to deal with it out on the street, and then we get to deal with it in the courtroom. With that said, we have 3 branches of government, right? We've got the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. I'm the DA for the 4th Judicial District. Does anybody want to guess which branch the DA's office falls in? You don't get to guess, Kate. It's an answer? Yeah, does anybody want to, anybody that doesn't already know these things? Executive, legislative, or judicial? What? Executive, that's exactly right. We're part of the executive branch.
He's mine. That's yes.
Yeah. Are you feeding them the answer? Are you texting them? Put your phone away, Sheriff.
We've got hand signals.
So I say that only to point out the obvious too, that similar to the sheriff's office and to the police officers, we're all executive branch forms of government. We have to work with the laws that the legislature gives us, that the government gives us. That's why I wanted to ask that question and just point that out. That if bad laws are being passed and then they're being foisted on us, we have to deal with the outcomes of that. And despite that criminal justice reform, we are still going after the bad guys more than any of the DA's office in the state, and I can say that unequivocally. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we get such great support from the commissioners. With that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Joe Roybal.
Yes, thanks, Michael. You give attorney a mic, and we were told 10 minutes.
Well, I was going to go another hour, but...
So I'm Joe Roybal, I'm the sheriff, and I have the best job in the sheriff's office. Not because I'm responsible for it, but because I get to brag on the people you see here tonight that are wearing the uniform, wearing the gray, and my professional staff. And I never waste an opportunity to brag on my people. All the good work that's happening is absolutely 100% because of them. I made promises when I ran for office, and I set the direction we're going, and I set the priorities for my office, but these men and women make it happen. And they have taken the call. I don't want to get emotional. I could not be happier my first year in office. I'm in a year and a half now, and the strides that we've made, turning it around and improving service to you all in the community is remarkable, and it's because of that. I'll go over some stats a little later. I'm sure we'll have some questions regarding it, but I want to talk specifically about things that impact where we're at right here in District 4 of the county, in eastern El Paso County. Traffic obviously is one of them. Substation, right? Let's talk about the substation. The City of Colorado Springs has done a great job for many years now with substations. They have substations scattered throughout the city, which allows them to deploy their resources, their men and women, from various locations throughout the city. For a long time now, forever, El Paso County Sheriff's Office, we've deployed from one area. And where is that? Downtown Colorado Springs, right across from the courthouse. Not very efficient. My people are effective, but still not very efficient. So when they begin their shift, they're already behind the power curve. They're starting in the middle of downtown Colorado Springs and deploying to unincorporated El Paso County to do their job to serve you. You feel, yeah, Michael feels very safe. We're right across the street from him. But we're looking for efficiencies. And we started this several years ago looking for a place. It never quite worked out, and then Falcon Fire had some land, and they gifted it to us for $1, I believe, right, Commissioner? $1, and kind of changed. And I've admitted this to Sheriff Elder after he left office and I was elected. I was his undersheriff. We had plans for that substation. And quite honestly, it was a citizen service center east. We were going to have a clerk and recorder out there, along with us and the treasurer. It was basically an office building and no holding cells, no cellular port. So I stalled that project. And when I was elected, we changed it. And I had some of my staff change directions on that, help redesign it, and now, I'm proud to say, we will have a fully operational substation in unincorporated El Paso County, which is Falcon. That's not the name of it. I'm not ready to announce the name of it, but it's a pretty cool name that we came up with. It has a cellular port for my deputies to drive it, for securing prisoners. It has 2 holding cells with cameras. It has an interview room. It is a true police substation. That's what we need in eastern El Paso County to help deploy the resources and reduce the calls for service, the time for the calls for service. That's also an issue. When people say, well, how long does it take for us to get a cop, for us to get a deputy out here? It takes too long. Here's the key to that.
We don't dial 911 out here.
You don't dial I'm good with that.
You got that, right?
I got it. Government doesn't know how many guns I have, nor will they
I'm
have.
just kidding. We rely very heavily, but you guys get what I mean, right?
Okay. Commissioner Geitner. Here's what that means for you. Here's how important the substation is. It's about 35, 40 minutes from Falcon to downtown Colorado Springs. I know because I drive it every day. I live in unincorporated Paso County. I live out here, Rex and Meridian. Thank you, finally getting a light. Imagine my deputies saving 35 to 40 minutes at the beginning of their shift, going out to where they patrol. Imagine they arrest somebody out here in Calhoun. We're an hour away from the jail on Las Vegas Street. The booking process, 30 to 40 minutes, an hour back. Nearly 3 hours of that deputy's time is taken off the streets, taken away from serving you. So now I have a fully operational substation in Falcon. My deputy makes an arrest or has to interview a suspect. Instead of going downtown for an interview or the jail for the arrest, you go to Falcon. Knock out 35 minutes. Process them there. Here's the key. They leave them there. It's going to be fully manned 24/7 substation. My deputy gets back out and starts serving the community. We have deputies there watching the prisoners. Now, I'm not going to waste patrol resources to go and take them to the jail. I have people in intake and release. I have people in court transport. People in court transport, they're traveling every day throughout the state. We will have scheduled transports where they come, pick up the substation, and take them to the jail. Leave patrol out on the streets. That's going to mean more resources available to you all. That's going to reduce time. It's not a waste of time, it's part of the process, but it's going to reduce the amount of time of that process for my patrol division, my patrol deputies. That is going to make a huge impact. I can't guess what that number will be, but I know it will be significant. I look forward to seeing what those statistics are of the amount of time that the deputies are out there on the road providing services that I promised we would deliver. The quality of service, community trust, legislation, all those promises in my campaign we're keeping. It's part of our strategic plan. It is part of the pillars that I set in place for the office that my awesome men and women go out and accomplish every single day. Huge. We're hoping to break ground by the end of this year, but if not, beginning of next year. That will happen. And I think they estimate to have it completed just under a year, Andy?
Yeah, it's about a 9 months at this point.
9-month construction from time to break ground. Tremendous. I plan, this might be news to some of my patrol people here, I plan to move at least 50% of my patrol resources, patrol assets, out to Falcon. Unincorporated El Paso County. They can deploy from Falcon to Black Forest, to Monument, out east here, even down south. It's going to save time. Right now, I'm considering having the patrol commander out there, which more likely I will. Now they're all fighting to be the patrol commander because they want to be the commander of a new substation. But we already have that person picked out. Fully operational police station in unincorporated Paso County. First time in Sheriff's Office history. I'm pretty proud of that. Let's talk about traffic. I have some statistics here. We know it's an issue, right? We had a death just this last week. Because we were short-staffed a few years ago, we had to take units such as traffic, SWAT, and put them to patrol so we continue those services. Well, we solved that staffing issue. We solved it, actually last October we were fully staffed, and then we fell a little behind again because of retirements. We came back up. I think we're 2 down right now, but we've been fully staffed. In a couple of weeks, or when does that happen, Jason? When do you get your second full-time traffic person?
This Sunday.
This Sunday.
Who's counting?
We have nearly doubled the amount of traffic stops this year, or last year versus 22, the first year I was in office. And that's the efforts of 2 people. Remember I have the fun job of writing? Those 2 gentlemen back there, raise your hand please. Right there. Sergeant Hay, the leader of the traffic unit. Remarkable. The state, they're looking to us. They come to us, say, hey, we want to give you some more resources. We like what you do in El Paso County. Because far too long, El Paso County was number 1 in traffic fatalities. Well, we had to do something about that, and we did. Deputy Offutt there, he drives that nice black and gold DUI car. He's awesome. Don't let him catch you. He is awesome. Those two gentlemen have nearly single-handedly doubled those stops, along with patrol. We changed the mindset. Hey, you patrol, you're part of the traffic unit. You're out there every day. And they've taken that challenge. And it's incredible the work that they've done. I don't have the statistics yet for this year, obviously. We're only halfway through. I guarantee you we're going to be more traffic stops and citations than last year. The mounted unit. I'm sure you all seen the news, the rodeo. Changed the barn. We're now down at Norris Penrose. Amazing. They love us there. I increased the mounting. We had 5 additional deputies, not full-time, it's ancillary duty. Purchased another horse. Valuable resources and assets with our mounted unit. You know, CSPD, they got the motorcycles, we got the horses. And I'm very proud of them. If you look at our deputies now, for 2 weeks I've authorized the Western Heritage uniform, which I put in policy last year. My deputies love it. They keep asking me, Sheriff, can we keep it? Well, it's part of the policy. We'll see how often we authorize it. I have some ideas. But they love it. We have deputies in the jail right now walking around those wards wearing hats, jeans, and boots. They love it. It's who we are. I wanted our identity back. We're the sheriff's office. We're not a police department. We worked really hard over the last year and a half to bring that identity back, and now you see it here tonight. If you're at the rodeo, you saw it at the rodeo. Mountain unit. Street breakfast, there we were, leading the charge. We have a new trailer, new truck, newer truck, with new markings, call it our family crest, our logo. We're absolutely proud. Something that we're working on with commissioners and with county, we're committed to compensating our people. We're fully staffed long before anybody in this region was. But yet, everybody in the region makes more than my deputies. We're working on that. So they don't do it because we pay the most. They don't do it because the new sheriff is cool. Oh, I think it's kind of the case. They do it because they care about you all. And that's what I love writing about. They do it because they love their community. I didn't have to bend their arm and say, let's provide better service to the community. Let's work on community trust. They wanted that, and they go out and do it. You said us loose, Sheriff, we got this. And look what they've done. So I'm extremely proud of them, and I'm glad some of them are here tonight to hear that. And before I forget, I will say this. When you see my deputies on the street, if you appreciate what they're doing, please tell them. Please tell them, hey, we appreciate you. We like what you're doing. If you encounter one of my deputies and it's not a good encounter and you're upset, don't tell them. That's my job. If you're unhappy with the office, you're unhappy with the job they did, you tell me. Don't tell my deputy. I'll take that for them. Please praise them, complain to me. I'll take it all day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to take some questions from people. I'll be the microphone runner. So if anyone has any questions, I'll come to you, and then I'll run the mic back up to whoever the question is for.
I don't need a microphone.
Oh, well, all right. You can give us a start then.
Yes, Commissioner, Lieutenant McMillan with the Sheriff's Office, obviously. I'm a long-term resident of El Paso County. I live in Raymond, so I live in your district. I'm curious, as an employee, a long-term 20-plus year employee in the Sheriff's Office, what you and your fellow commissioners are doing to help fund the Sheriff's Office to take care of our people more. And I'm not talking about the tools on our belt, I'm talking about the tools for our minds to take care of our law enforcement so that we can take care of ourselves, so we can take care of our community better.
Sure. So as I'm sure you probably know, we utilize our budget to fund all of these offices, but how that money is spent is, of course, up to the sheriff. So when it comes to our role, we are in a more general role of making sure that we are utilizing our funds to fund our top priorities, in which public safety is one of those. So over the last few years, a lot of that funding has had to unfortunately go to things that were probably not the top of the priority list before legislative changes happened and different things happened. So we certainly always prioritize public safety. You can see that in our budget last year. We've put millions and millions of dollars more every year towards public safety, both the sheriff's office as well as the DA's office, including, unfortunately, the things that have to increase, which are cost due to inflation. Certainly we have, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the medical contract at the jail. These are things that we've had to put millions and millions of dollars towards. So we continue to prioritize public safety in our budget. I think our change to the budget this year, where we actually look at, here's what we've been spending every year versus here's what we have that are increases that we're going to look at critical needs across the county, was only about $4 million, which is a lot of money. But when you're talking about funding elections, when you're talking about funding the sheriff's office, when you're talking about funding the DA's office, when you're talking about funding our roads, and all of the other departments, it is not an easy task for us to come and make sure we're funding all of those things and prioritizing, but we do that. But that's what our taxpayers have tasked us with, right? And so we do the very best we can at looking for efficiencies so we can do that. But we have, over the last several budgets, prioritized public safety in general for both of these offices. We did a salary study a few years ago, though I actually think that the sheriff at the time decided not to participate in that. So, yeah, not Sheriff Roybal, but that's the case a few years ago. So, but Sheriff Roybal, and us, we have been committed to doing that, working together, and we're going to continue to do that and put as much of those taxpayers' dollars into public safety as we are able to do. We are committed to doing that. So, not an easy task. Of course, we also know the public safety sales tax is specific to the sheriff's office. Kind of the genesis of that was to help with those things. Specifically, I won't talk about how that's being spent because Sheriff Roybal knows far more about that than I do, but that is one of the things that the commissioners did several years back in order to make sure that the sheriff's office had a dedicated revenue stream that was not going to, that he gets to decide on, so that we were not just dependent upon the general fund for funding those specific things.
I probably don't.
Well, I'm here, so
Because I don't want to keep you out. I'm just wondering, we know that there is no place to grow going west anymore. It's coming our way, it's coming to rural El Paso County. We're not happy, but it is what it is. What does responsible growth look like to you? I know there's a master plan in place, but how can we keep it responsible so that those of us that have been out here get to keep our water, our benefits, our resources, and not hurt those of us that have been doing agricultural and come out here for the peace and the quiet? How do we keep this responsible?
Okay. So from the land development and land use perspective of what commissioners do, there's a couple of things with this. Responsible growth means something different to everyone, I have learned. So it all depends upon what you are putting into those words. But I'll say what I think we are charged to do as commissioners is to ensure that we have infrastructure that is keeping up with that growth. We don't get to pick who moves here. Good old US of A, and it's a free country. But what that does mean is that we want to make sure that we're dealing with roads that need to be upgraded, with roads that need to be maintained. That's been a problem, quite frankly, over the years. It's one of the reasons that I ran to be a commissioner. I'm the only commissioner that lives in the unincorporated area and probably spends more time on those roads than any of the other commissioners. And that's not to say that they don't care about those things, but I get to keep it top of mind all the time. So one of the things that we've done is we have put extra money. Now, of course, we were already behind. And so now we're trying to catch up. And we have put $10 million extra every year into our roads to be able to start to work on some of those backlogs, but not just that. When we take very seriously looking at data, how we're dealing with our roads, and how we can make the most out of every dollar. So we have taken some extra strides to make sure that we are getting the most out of every dollar, and that means looking at each one of those roads, looking at, when is the right time to maintain those roads. And so sometimes I actually get a lot of questions about this from residents, just, hey, this road seems worse than this one, and you guys are working on this one. Why would you do that? Well, the answer is because once roads get to a certain point, and we do have our public works experts here, so they can answer this even better than I can, but once we do get to a certain point, if we maintain that road rather than let it get to failure, we can save a lot of money. So sometimes we have to really look at those roads and go, I know it doesn't make sense if you're just looking at the roads and going, what the heck is the county doing? But if there actually is a plan to that, and it makes sense for not letting another road get into failure because it's then more expensive for us to bring that up. So we're working on maintaining those and then at the same time trying to fix those roads that have gone into failure. So that's one of the biggest things that we do in order to make sure we are growing responsibly. And then on the other side of that, I encourage you to come to a land use hearing if you have not done that. A lot of people ask all kinds of questions. One of the questions that I get, and I won't talk about anything specific, because if you've done land use, you know I can't talk about anything specific. We're talking about the way that we work in terms of which branches we're a part of. The county commission has both executive, legislative, and judicial function. When we are acting in those land use hearings, and we do have our planning director here as well, so if there are questions that come up about certain projects, she can answer those questions, even though I'm not allowed to talk about those. But for legal reasons, I'm acting as a judge in those cases, in those hearings. We call them hearings, and we do treat them as a hearing. There's evidence presented. And the reason is because we have to protect the individual rights of the applicant. They have a right to apply, so sometimes people will go, why would you even consider this? This is terrible. I don't like this plan at all. Why would you consider this? We must consider everything that citizens bring in front of us, and we have to do so impartially. And what we do is we apply that to criteria. Well, that criteria is usually related to roads. When we have new development, they have to pay in and fix roads. So we do, to me, that is responsible, saying, hey, if you're bringing, sorry, this thing's moving over. If you are bringing, it's a little wobbly. If you are bringing in a new development and that's going to bring in more traffic, we're going to require a traffic study. And when we see that we're going to need extra capacity on roads, the developer, the builder, whoever's responsible for that, and that could just be a business as well. It doesn't have to just be a, an actual housing development. They're going to be required to pay to build those roads so that we can keep up with that infrastructure. So that's a big piece of it. People will talk about schools a lot too. There are provisions and statute. That's something we've been working on as well. When we have new building going on, schools get money. So we often hear, hey, our schools can't handle it. Well, that's why there are processes built in place. This one's actually statutory, that require developers to give money to those schools. So those things are supposed to work hand in hand to deal with the growth. And a lot of people don't realize that those things are happening, so I'm glad that you asked that question. But to me, that is what it means to be responsible, is to make sure our infrastructure can keep up and make sure that all citizens still have high quality of life.
The only thing I would want to just touch on is, if I don't get tripped, the stage is treacherous up here, is the outgrowth too, that the impacts on public safety. So we're already looking at, state judicial is looking at expanding the number of judges we have in the 4th Judicial District, and that's because of population growth. Our area of the state has been growing over the last several years at a rate faster than the rest of the state. I think roughly 6% compared to 4.5% for the state. And so all of these people moving into this area, it's a great place to live. It's where I've raised my kids, and my wife and I live here up in Monument. But it's a great place to live, and so it's drawing people in. That brings issues that the commissioners have to solve in infrastructure. Part of that infrastructure issue is going to be, how do we expand the courthouse in a responsible way? How do we staff the DA's office, approving new positions in the DA's office to actually go into these courtrooms and prosecute cases that are happening? And we see that just as a outgrowth of population growth, you see some measure of an increase in crime too. When you have more people bunched into an area, you're going to have more crime. And so all of that stuff affects both my office, Joe's office, and it affects the commissioners and the way that they're doling out the dollars. And we have to be very good stewards of the money that we get from the taxpayers. Carrie mentioned that earlier. That this is a very fiscally responsible part of the state. I'm proud of that. I'm something that I believe in very strongly too. And so when we're talking about the money that we're spending, we have to be responsible with it and putting it to the right things and get the most bang for our buck. And that's something that all of us work hard on every single day. And that includes the population growth as we're moving out east, right? So there's a lot of other issues that are created just with that expanding population.
I've already succeeded, I haven't tripped yet. So what does it mean to be a sheriff? What is my job? And this is an answer to your question, ma'am. I have to be a police executive. That means ensuring the office keeps up with the law, changing the legislature, and making sure we're following the law. I have to be a politician, so I'm elected. And I have to be a businessman. My office has a budget of roughly over $105 million. And it's my responsibility to spend that responsibly. The growth that the county's seen, we have not kept up with as far as resources on patrol. So the first thing I did, I put a team together and we scrubbed the org chart. What positions do we have that we're duplicating efforts or they're just not needed? I call it trimming the fat. I treat the sheriff's office budget like my own personal budget. Where do we have waste? And we found enough money, just over $2 million, by eliminating positions, not asking for any more money. These were positions that already existed, eliminated those, and reallocated that money to what I call essential services. Those are your deputy sheriffs. And that's where we put it. We found enough money for 13 additional deputies. So I cut 2 commanders, took some stars off some collars, and bought deputies with it. We eliminated a chief position, bought deputy. Treat it like a business. I have scrubbed that budget as much as we possibly can. This is where the commissioners come in, and they're committed to helping me. I have gone to the commissioner saying, we've done this. I've gotten rid of the waste. Now I need your help. The growth in El Paso County, people think, well, there's more people, there's more taxes. You must have everything you need, Sheriff. Well, we all know something called taper, right? So taper growth does not keep up with population growth. With population growth comes crime. More calls for service. Excuse me. Since 2012, when the public safety tax was first passed, we've had an increase of over 90% for calls for service. Over 90%. In our patrol resources, we have not kept up with it. Here's the business side of things. I look at the office like a business. It takes 6 people. Let's count this off. I need 10. Well, the second row has grown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that second row, my beautiful wife Melissa, beautiful Mrs. DA, and my sheriff. Say that's a patrol briefing. That's a patrol briefing for all of El Paso County. Well, how do I increase services? One deputy costs the county $122,000 with pay and benefits. That doesn't count equipment. See their nice vest, their weapons, their tools, their cameras, vehicles that cost $80,000 now. It's a very expensive business. But I got to put more people on the road. So I have 10 deputies for El Paso County. It's not keeping up. We already talked about the substation. That's one way to increase services and keep up with the growth, is to put my deputies where they're needed. And that's what we're doing. But now I need more deputies. It takes, let's count off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The entire first row, and our gentleman over here, our lead. 6 people to cover one post. Cover every briefing, every shift, around the clock, 365 days a year. So if you see one deputy, it takes 6 of them. 6 people for that one position at $122,000 each, because I have to train them. There's weekends, there's holidays. They can't work 24 hours a day. They're shifts. So now that's another problem. It's expensive. I increased patrol specifically from 70 to 76 in January. That 6 is key, right? So now instead of everybody in the second row to my undersheriff, and I include my chief, I have one more deputy on patrol, one more deputy for the streets, every briefing, every day, 365 days a year. That's the business side. By the end of the year, or early next year, I'm hoping to add another 6. What does that mean? Now, I include Ms. King. You see how we're making an impact? And that is without asking for any more money. We're doing it all inside with what we have. We're scrubbing. We're just about to the end of that though, but that's how you combat that growth. And up until now, we haven't been doing a good job with it, but we're starting to do that. Our dispatch center. We provide dispatch services for every fire district outside of Colorado Springs, over 22 fire districts, and every law enforcement agency outside of Colorado Springs Police. Future growth. It's all about relationships. We have made a deal, an agreement with the E911 Authority to help our dispatch center grow. They approved it. They said, Sheriff, you commit $800,000, we'll put in the rest. Completely new, updated, and remodeled dispatch center. Will only cost you $800,000. That is a steal. That expansion will take us 14 years into the future. That's responsible business. And that's what we're doing at the Sheriff's Office. I hope I answered your question. It's the Commissioner's show. I do want to give her the mic.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. We got another question over here, all right?
Okay, you did, I mean, no.
Hey.
Thank you for having us today, by the way. Really good information, appreciate that. This question is pretty much for Ms. Geitner. Concerning the master plan, I know you're very familiar with the master plan, and especially in the Peyton area. The majority of all the properties in that area, as we know, are zoned as A35 and RR5. What is your stance on the growth in that area, and what is your stance on the protection of the community against what we would consider not beneficial growth to the area at this point?
Okay, so who in here thinks that the government should plan everybody's lives? Me either. So we are not a centralized planning agency. Our master plan is a guide document to help us understand and is a big part of how we plan for roads and lots of other things as well. So how I look at land use, we have criteria for everything that we do. And it is proper and we are legally required to look at that criteria. So if someone comes in with an application for a rezone, and sometimes I hear people say we shouldn't rezone. It is a right for a citizen to come to us and ask for a rezone. So when they come to us and they ask for a rezone, we look at the criteria. We are legally bound by that. And if they meet that criteria, we must approve their application. Again, that's a judicial function, quasi-judicial function that the commissioners have. It's the proper way to protect individual rights of an applicant and private property rights. So just like you don't want me coming and telling you what you want to do on your property, and I completely understand that, we typically look at it from those things. So again, we have to meet that criteria, but always looking at private property is fundamentally tied to our Constitution. It is, as a matter of fact, over the years, the Supreme Court has started to devalue private property. It's the same reason why you won't see me put a tax question in front of you, unless I absolutely believe there is no other way to get the job done. And that doesn't happen very often. I think we live within the budget that the taxpayer set for us. But that's because it's your private property, your money, right? So that's very important to me, and I do take that very seriously. But we have to do that in a way where we have safety in our community, where we have roads and infrastructure in our community. Water is a big issue, and I think maybe you didn't hear my first water thing. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were in here. Okay, and water is tough, and as I said, We care about water a lot. We do have a 300-year water rule. We're the only place in the state that has a 300-year water rule. And that is because we really, a long time ago, long before me and probably many of you in this room, the commissioners really wanted to protect the county long-term from that perspective. So we can make some of those rules. Sometimes people come to us and say, well, that's paper water. That's true, but that's because that's how it works in the state of Colorado. We are the only state in the entire nation that has a water court system. When a court says you have a private property right for water, you get to withdraw that water, whether I like it, you like it, anybody else. So it is complicated how we do that, and so we do have parameters. That doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want on your land, certainly, but we really do, for the most part, as a board, and I am no exception to that, believe very strongly in private property rights as a foundational freedom and right that this country was based on. If you go back and you read what the founders said about how important private property is, once the government can start telling you what to do on your private property, you've lost a lot of your freedom. So we take it from that perspective, we take that very seriously, but we also want to make sure that roads, infrastructure, public safety, all of those things are taken into account. So when you look at our criteria, that's primarily what our criteria is about. Can they provide those things? Have they checked those boxes to see those things happen? And then you have all kinds of other stuff that happens around special districts and things as those types of projects develop. And when we look at special districts, those are the things that serve those services out in the area. They're brand new, they stand up. So same thing, if people say, oh, we don't have X here, we don't have Y here. A lot of times those things have to be stood up in the process, and if you watch the process along, you'll see how those things come kind of into fruition to make sure that those things exist inside of the community. But again, private property is a fundamental right of every citizen. We take that seriously, but we always look to that criteria because that is our legal requirement.
Thank you.
Sit down.
Sheriff Roybal, could you talk to us about what you've done with the immigration crisis going on in the state of Colorado? It's the #1 issue for all 50 states, and I know this year, legislation-wise and other reasons, you've had quite a few challenges. Can you talk to us about that?
She's on your staff. I don't blame her.
Absolutely. If people wondered about immigration and what we're doing here in El Paso County, the commissioners and I have joined a lawsuit with Douglas County and those commissioners and that sheriff. I have some standings, so my name is actually on the lawsuit, suing Governor Polis and the state of Colorado because they do not allow me to enter into a contract with ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. Every other federal agency I have a contract with, FBI, ATF, DEA, the military, around the region. We house the service members in our jail, but the state won't let me do that with ICE. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that's an overreach. The state should not allow me, should restrict me from entering a contract if I believe it will make my community safer. And that's in fact what they have done. The legislature passed that, and the governor signed it. So now we're filing a lawsuit along with commissioners, as we have standing. That is only the beginning. We had a legislature introduce a bill that would wipe that out. And so we went up to Denver and testified. One of my promises to you all was active legislation. And so I have staff there at least every week, sometimes multiple times a week. If it's not me, a representative in uniform will be there testifying either for or against a bill. We were there. They didn't even want to hear me. When I got up to testify, 2 of the legislatures got up and left. I won't tell you what party they belong to, because we serve everybody here. But they didn't even want to hear it. Try to explain how working with ICE is going to make the community safer. I'll give you a specific example. We had a gentleman who, I use the term loosely, was charged with sexual assault on a child. He had 3 victims all around the age of 7 years old. 3 little girls that he sexually assaulted. Not an American citizen. My investigators did a great job. We made the arrest, but I couldn't ask ICE to place a hold on this person. Every other American citizen, if we think there's a flight risk, say you're from California, well, I'll ship you back. I won't try to. Say you're from Ohio or any other state. Say, Your Honor, we believe this person's a flight risk. We'll work with our DA. We'll go up there and argue. Please place a no bond hold on this person so this person can be held accountable and we can serve justice to our citizens. Our DA's done that. We've asked for that. I have no way of determining, even if I suspect that this person is undocumented and from another country, no way of confirming that, so I can go to the courts and say, this person's a flight risk. They're going to leave if we let them out. 3 7-year-old girls, sexually assaulted. This person posts bond. Guess where he's at? We suspect he's out of country. Our DA can't hold him accountable, can't prosecute him because he fled. That's what I'm talking about. That's the tool I need to keep our community safe. Odds are he's out there right now doing the same thing, re-victimizing children. And the governor says, nope, I can't do it. Well, there's cameras here, so I won't see any cuss words. But you probably all know how I feel about that. Since it's a rodeo and county, I'll say the first word, and that's bull. Then I'll stop. So we filed a lawsuit along with Townhall County. Sheriff Mikesell filed a lawsuit so he can enter a contract with ICE. And that's what we're doing to combat immigration. We're going through the courts because we have to.
Any other questions for anyone? All right.
I don't need the mic. I talk pretty loud. This goes along with what Sheriff Roybal was just talking about. And although I have a lot of questions about roads and other things in our area, my biggest concern right now is what's our drug situation out here and then human trafficking. Are you seeing a lot of that? Or I don't care who answers it.
I'll take that. Our DA might have something. As far as drugs, District Attorney Allen talked about fentanyl and what we're doing with that. It has been prevalent in our schools. I'll get on my soapbox for a little bit. As a society, as a community, I don't think you're in El Paso County. Several years ago, we said people have the right to use medical marijuana. Then we passed laws as recreational marijuana. What I don't think people realize is the unintended consequence of that decision. It is not the adults that it's impacting necessarily, but what is it doing to our children? Having that kind of mindset, being that comfortable with marijuana, it's like alcohol. It's like cigarettes. So you have now children growing up under that new law saying, well, it can't be that bad because the grown-ups are doing it. Grown-ups wouldn't be doing it if it was bad. So that's the mindset we have in our youth. Our son, our baby, he's now out of high school for a couple of years. He saw it. Dad, marijuana's in school. When I was growing up, when we were growing up, what did we have to worry about? If somebody brought alcohol to school, it was a big deal, right? Ooh, you're going to get in trouble. Now it's marijuana everywhere. Well, now, we graduated from marijuana. That's nothing. We have now fentanyl in schools. It is out there. It is everywhere. Because, like Mike Allen said, it's laced. It's everywhere. Marijuana has fentanyl now. It is everywhere. And so if there's a drug, more likely it has fentanyl in it. Human trafficking used to be huge several years ago when I was part of Metro V&I. We were combating that. We were doing massage parlors. We're not seeing that a big problem currently. Metro Unit, which is a collaboration between us, Colorado Springs, and smaller agencies, they do a good job of seeing what the issue is. They have an intelligence unit that has their sights on crime, and the crimes that are impacting communities what we focus on to try to reduce those. Drug trafficking is not one that is really prevalent in El Paso County.
I guess what I would say about, directly to your question is that you should assume that drug activity is active all over the county. When we look at heat maps, that's kind of what the sheriff was referring to just a moment ago. You can look at any part of the county and there's crime there happening just like there is down in Colorado Springs. You just won't have the same numbers because the population is smaller. But you should absolutely know that you've got fentanyl out here, you've got methamphetamine out here. Everything that we've got downtown Colorado Springs is making its way out here too. And when I mentioned at the very beginning, fentanyl being in the schools, it's absolutely true. You know, we had that 16-year-old girl die at Mitchell High School. We've had other young kids die from 4 years old, actually as young as 2 years old from fentanyl, all the way up to people as old as you are. So it's everywhere. It's across the whole country right now. When we're talking about the number of seizures that we're getting, it's enough to kill, this is just seized from DEA, right? It's enough to kill every Coloradan 16 times. That's how much fentanyl's been seized in the state of Colorado. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. It is everywhere. It is absolutely saturated the drug market. It is mixed in with every single drug out there. And when you talk about then how that translates to human trafficking, think about how this fentanyl is getting across the southern border. It doesn't have arms and legs itself, right? It's being carried across by people. Oftentimes those people could be subject to or victims of human trafficking. When we're talking about the harrowing journey that they have to make from down south all the way through Mexico, because we've got this weird immigration policy right now that encourages people to make that harrowing trek. That is inhumane, and it has led to human trafficking across the border, both directions. And those people are not necessarily probably carrying fentanyl across in a willing way. Cartels they don't want to put themselves at risk, right? They don't want to put the cartel leaders at risk, so they're going to get mules that are going to bring that across, often under threat. So it's absolutely happening all over the country, and you should assume that it's right here too.
All right, we got any other questions from anybody? All right, any final thoughts from anyone on the stage?
I'll remind everybody here, I have the best job, and that's bragging about my people. And again, please, if you see one of my deputies, please love on them, show your appreciation. And if you can't love on them, call me, I'll take the complaint for them. Thank you for being here, and we love serving.
Thank you. I would just say thank you again for taking the time to come out and hear a little bit about what's going on. And, you know, my final thoughts are really this. We have a unique place in El Paso County, and I am incredibly grateful for this community, for, quite frankly, a conservative community in the state of Colorado. We are the largest county in Colorado by population, and we take it to the state quite a bit. As Sheriff Roybal talked about a little bit about lawsuits and different things that we have going on, it's because we don't sit back and just hear everything the state says and feel, you know, good about it. We know that it's hurting our residents. The laws that are being passed are hurting our residents. Unfortunately, the way that, or fortunately, it is just the way that our Constitution and the state of Colorado works. County commissioners are, we live in a statutory county, and county commissioners have only the political authority that the state gives us, actually. And that makes it really hard for us to fight back. But we've been doing that. We've been sharing. A lot of times when the state legislature wants to push down a lot of these bad laws, you know, these guys do an incredible job of fighting back against that stuff. And the commissioners have really joined that fight in the last few years, especially, and lifted our voices in that. But I do want you to know we are working on all of those things. We're working on fighting back about all of those things. But we have a responsibility. This community is unlike anywhere else. There's a reason why people are moving here. And it's unlike anything else, but we have to protect it. It is not given that we will continue to have an amazing DA like Michael Allen. It's not a given that we will continue to have an amazing sheriff like Sheriff Roybal. who really fight for the safety of our community. And so we have to keep fighting for that and making sure that our friends and neighbors understand what is going on. So I encourage you, if you're not already plugged in somewhere, to get engaged. Find a way to plug in. We need every single one of you because we're in this fight on a daily basis, and I know we all take that very seriously, but we need our citizens to help us make sure that we keep this community the great community that it has been for a very long time. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Great job. I don't have much more to add other than to say thank you for being out here tonight. Thanks for coming out and supporting the fair. And then I just want to point out one fun fact. Remember when I talked about this being Kansas territory back in the day before Colorado was a state? There's one person in this room that really loves that fact, and he's a closet Jayhawk fan, and that's our sergeant back in the back. Raise your hand, Sergeant. He's the guy with the white beard and the bald head. Anyway, thank you all for being here.
One more closing comment. I think it's important as your elected sheriff to be available to you all. So it's a plug to Eastern Plains Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Dave back there and Mike. You will see me the first Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock in the morning, Grace Church in Falcon, at the Eastern Plains Chamber of Commerce. I answer any questions and make myself available. I think I've missed it once in 2 years. Maybe twice, but I think only once.
We got it wrote down, don't worry about it.
On that tape. But you'll see me there the first Wednesday of every month, and make myself available for those folks out here. So join the Eastern Plains Chamber of Commerce if you have a business, and come out and see me.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Sheriff Roybal, Commissioner Geitner, and DA Allen for being here today. Just for the rest of you, they are going to hang around for a little bit, so if you do have any other questions that come up, feel free to grab them. As Commissioner Geitner mentioned, we also do have some people here from our Parks Department, from the Planning Department, and from Public Works as well. They're over here in this corner pretending that I'm not saying all this right now to them. So if you have questions for them specifically, you can also come and speak to them. But other than that, thank you for coming out tonight, and hope you enjoy the El Paso County Fair.
Thank you.